What is the best game of all time? That is a question that is asked a lot. I mean, anybody even slightly involved with gaming is asked this question on a really regular basis. What is the greatest game of all time? And a lot of people will just say one of their favourite games that comes to their head first, or they'll say something recent that they've played and enjoyed. But to sit down and actually come up with the best game ever, I thought sounded like an interesting challenge, so I decided to do this list. Instead of doing the Poop Not Poop Game Awards this year, I decided to do a 100 best games of all time. And the reason I'm not doing Poop and Non-Poop is there were some good games, but two of the games I really want to cover, Last Guardian and Final Fantasy 15, I don't have at the time of recording, and it felt weird to do a list without the fucking Last Guardian in, and I like hitting this day every year, and also for the Poop Awards, what am I going to cover in that? Like, No Man's Sky? Oh, a game that was boring. Who cares? So, next year they'll probably be back, but this year, 100 greatest games of all time. 6 months I have spent on this list. 6 months ago, I started actually coming up with a list of games. And I came up with a short list of, I think it was 350 games. It took 4 months to get a short list of, 3 months to get the short list of 350. A month to prune that down to about 150. And then the last 2 months was just kind of getting it in the 100 order and taking things out and moving things around. But I've come up with a really solid list. I mean, this is a personal list to me. I'm not going to be like, oh, it's Football Manager, because I don't care, really. But this is my top 100 games ever. And I feel like I came up with a really good criteria, because I look at this list and go, there is nothing controversial here. Like, this is not a list where, at number one, I've got, oh, it's an obscure Genesis game. It's about Phil Collins. You've got to try and spend as long as possible without starting in the air tonight, and you've got to walk around the stage and not do anything. No, that's not... oh, shit, that's number 78, actually. Oh, well, we'll skip that. This was difficult. This was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. I was like, oh, whip that out in a night. And then that was fucking June. So, yeah, it's done now. It's in front of me on many, many pieces of paper. And we're going to start... it's going to be every day for the next 10 days. We're going to do 10 a day. Just have a little discussion about why I put them in this place. And then we'll have a nice overall list of my top 100 games of all time. The criteria I was using to judge this... for older games was more of a how it's held up was kind of that's a big deal. Is like there's some older games in this, but they have to have held up. I mean, there's some older games that have not held up at all, and so they kind of fall off this list because I can't really recommend them now. These are the top 100 games that you can play now, and they fit now. I included ambition was a really big point for me. Like how ambitious the game was, and also how well it's pulled off. You can go, I'm going to make a game that does everything, but if you make a game that doesn't do that very well, there's no point in giving you any points for ambition, because if you didn't pull it off quite so well. And the main thing I ranked everything on was my first feeling. So as I was writing these games down and reading them off the list, I think I was on Metacritic reading the list of every game in order, pretty much. I think I was doing it console by console, actually. But as I was reading the games, I would jot down the first thing that came to my head. And I was actually ranking the games on what that thing was. If it was annoyance, it would go down. If it was a moment, it would be sort of a middly thing. But if it was a feeling, and like an actual, like an emotion that came forward before like an actual moment, I'd rank that higher than a moment. Because I think a game that makes you feel something is more important than a game that goes, oh, that was cool. You know, like... giving meaning is important than just, oh, the thing exploded. So that was quite a loose criteria, but from that, this list forms and it kind of fits in the order. And if I go, oh, what about this and this and this, it kind of, for me, this order fits. And I like this. I mean, I will say absolute apologies to things like Total Annihilation, Black and White, Driver San Francisco, Hotline Miami, Mass Effect, Flower, and Advanced Wars for being the ones in the red that just didn't quite make it onto the top. They were like 101 to 107 or 8 or whatever it was. They didn't quite make it onto the list. They were like just on the edge, and but they didn't quite make it over. But what did? Well, let's start talking about them now with number 100. Evil Genius. Brilliant. We're starting with a game I haven't yet covered. Evil Genius is kind of a Dungeon Keeper-esque game where you play as an evil genius digging out a volcano lair, but it's got such a wonderful sort of swinging 60s feel to it all, and it feels like a sort of a camp spy movie. My first memories of this game were just cackling menacingly when a secret agent had stumbled into one of my really obscure Rube Goldberg-style traps. And like I remember building overly complicated traps. And when a spy got through the overcomplicated traps, I was like, oh, how did he get through that? But then I realised I'd actually become the villain of any James Bond film ever. And I love that the game made me do that, because I was there. My creativity was my downfall on many things, and that's kind of fits for the evil genius thing. But aside from that, it's also a fantastic management game. It's great fun, and I think there's a crap Facebook version that I'm not going to count. This is the original PC release. Play that one, not the shit one. Number 99! World of Goo! World of Goo is a building puzzle game where you move little goo blobs around the place and they build structures, kind of bendy, fragile structures. And my main feeling that I took away from this game was that not tightening in your stomach as you watch a tower you spent the last 10 minutes perfectly building just start to collapse, and you frantically start flinging goo at it to try and support it, and to no avail as it all falls down and your goo blobs get blended up. Add that to a wonderful soundtrack and quite a creepy tone. It's like not overtly creepy, but it's like subtly creepy, and it's just one of the best puzzle games ever. Number 98! Super Monkey Ball Deluxe! Quite possibly my most regularly played PS2 game. Anytime I've got people over, I always bust out Super Monkey Ball, because Monkey Bowling and Monkey Target are two of the finest party games ever made. The just sheer amount of laughter and happiness they can generate, especially the weird bowling one, and especially my dad on Monkey Target, because he has a great tendency of drowning his monkeys, it's just absolute hysterics. It is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and it's incredibly simple. I mean, it's an analog stick and a single button, so anybody can play. It's a great gateway game, just the actual base game. Give that to someone who's never played a game before. It's just the analog stick. It's genius, and they will have a great time. It's also quite possibly impossible, but I'm not going to hold that against it too much. Well, considering I've never finished it, maybe a little bit. Number 97! Pokemon Red/Blue, and probably Yellow. I'm not the biggest fan of turn-based combat. In fact, it's safe to say I particularly dislike it. But Pokemon is one of the most ambitious games I've ever played. I mean, the actual game itself on the Game Boy it's what, on a 512 kilobyte cart? I mean, that's insane. That's literally insane. Trying to put Pokemon onto that game of that size and going, I want to have 151 of these fucking things and a million moves and this entire adventure and a whole place to explore, and we're going to fit it on something that's smaller than the fucking Excel spreadsheet that was used to make this list of games. That's just insanity. The people who made that game were insane, ambition off the charts, and they fucking nailed it. And you can still play it, because they've not really done much to the series. Although I am quite enjoying Pokemon Sun and Moon right now. Apart from that fucking Pokedex. We'll talk about it later. Number 96! Fuel. Fuel is one of those games that I haven't really played a lot of the actual game, but I've put a lot of hours into. Because for me, Fuel is a game that you boot it up, you point your car in a direction, and you fuck off for a couple of hours. I mean, it literally takes hours to drive from one corner of the map to the other, and I know that because I've done it. It's huge, it's massive. I mean, and the terrain is genuinely interesting. You get to some places that are just, you come to basically the Grand Canyon at one point, you go, how the fuck am I supposed to get around this? And you have to go around for bloody miles. It's beautiful, and the landscape is strange, and the weather effects are stunning, and it's a strange, strange, strange game that I'm very happy exists. Number 95! Armadillo Run. One of the earliest, like, pure indie games that I ever really played on PC. I mean, Armadillo Run is just, it's an OK Go video playset. I think that's the best way of describing it. It's just a whole bunch of things. Like, it's like those bridge builds. You know those bridge builds you get now? It's like, build a bridge. Well, Armadillo Run was that, with elastic bands and fabric that actually moved like fabric, and metals, and like with bolts that you could basically shear, and you could just build anything you wanted, or you could solve puzzles and stuff. And this came out millions of years ago. Way beyond all of these other ones that are like, oh, you can build a bridge now. That's such ancient technology. Armadillo Run was their first, and Armadillo Run was their best. 94! DMC Devil May Cry. Well, this is about as controversial as this list is gonna get. DMC Devil May Cry, I think, was how you do a reboot. It's just how to do a reboot. It took what the Devil May Cry series was about, even if some of the later Devil May Cry games were not about that, and it kind of just boiled the essence down and made a new thing out of it. It kept what was supposed to be in there. I mean, Dante was a cocky little dickhole, but Dante was always a cocky little dickhole. And I like that this was the story of him becoming less of a cocky little dickhole, and it worked wonders, and it's a great combat-y kind of game. Possibly the combat's slightly not as good as some of the earlier stuff in the series, but, I mean, the look and design of all the levels, I mean, that fucking Fox News kind of level, that's insanely good stuff. That is some of the best level design we saw in that generation of gaming. It deserves to be this high. 93! Burnout Paradise. Take me down to the Paradise City where the cars are crashing and the girls are pretty. There's no girls. There's no people. Thinking about it, in Paradise City, there's not a single person apart from the DJ. But he may be a car. I think Burnout Paradise is actually set in the world of cars because there's no people in the cars. It's just cars everywhere smashing into each other and having a great time. Taking the Burnout franchise and making it one open world thing kind of seemed like a really stupid idea, and then I played it and went, no, you were right, this is brilliant. Absolutely wonderful. Kind of the last thing the Burnout franchise ever did, which seems so bizarre. It's an incredibly good game. I believe it also just got Xbox One backwards compatibility, so if you've never played it, you should go and play that thing, because it is one of the finest arcade races ever made. 92! Star Trek Voyager Elite Force. Back in my day, the unwritten rule was that a movie tie-in was going to be a massive piece of shit. Anytime a movie tie-in game would come out, it's a massive piece of shit. Nowadays, you don't really get movie tie-in games. You get, free-to-play mobile runner things. But Star Trek Voyager Elite Force is very special in that it's actually better than Star Trek Voyager. Star Trek Voyager Elite Force is literally the best Voyager ever got. It's incredible. And this, I'm going to point out, this is actually, I'm considering this the expansion pack version, because Virtual Voyager, being able to just walk around and go to every place in Voyager and solving little things, which is what the expansion pack was, is just what I want from video games. That's what I want from video games, is go, hey, you know that thing you love? Just explore it. Just see it. Just go and have a look around and poke in all the corners. I mean, this starship that you love and have grown up with, go and have a nosy. That is what video games should be doing, and that just... the feeling of just going into the shitty deck and seeing the insane guy, or going in the holodeck and booting up a program, teleporting stuff around, I mean, then assassinating Chakotay because he was boring. All wonderful, wonderful things, and just intense joy and happiness came from that game. It almost undid the memory of the episode Threshold. Almost. 91! Pixel Junk Shooter Ultimate. I have, what's the way to put it? Interest is wrong. Perversion's probably more accurate. A perversion with water physics in games. I don't know why. Water is one of those really, bizarre... It's just the simplest fucking thing on planet Earth, but it's really hard to do right. And Pixel Junk Shooter Ultimate, which is the game 1 and 2 combined, is just the best example of silly playing around with water physics. I mean, you play that game in co-op and you're going to lose a friend or relative. It's just... I mean, there's a bit where one of you gets the water gun and one of you gets the lava gun. That becomes a fight. You do not finish that level. There are many victims of that level. That is probably the game where I've played the most. The game that I've played the most in my life, where somebody sitting next to me has gone, whoops, after they've just been it's just a whoops kind of game. You haven't, you're oh, I'm buggering around, oh, I've killed someone. It's never intentional, but I've never known anyone to 100% that game, because you're just we're going to do this properly this time, oh, I got the lava gun, whee! And then you've killed yourself. Absolutely silly, bananas, bonkers fun. Anyway, that's the first 10. Tomorrow, 90 to 81. And then the rest on the days afterwards. Yeah, we'll do it in order. Yeah, let's do this in order. See you tomorrow.